Cool. Okay, Megan, obviously everyone knows you, but in case they don't,
Yeah.
tell them about you. Oh, I just saw your tree. I
And
like it.
it's cute. It's
It's
Target.
so cute.
And I don't know if you can see them. They're real small, but I have these little birds that are in
Oh,
like
those are
winter outfits.
so cute.
Also Target. I'm obsessed with Target right now. So
Always.
I mean always, but like
Yeah.
all of my Christmas decorations are all Target. So
Yes. Mm.
So yeah, I'm Megan. I'm the COO at A Lit Up Life. And yeah, basically I just help with making sure that the business runs and the business runs smoothly. And that's like includes everything from like, making sure that like Lacey's super supported and able to show up in everything that she does. And also make sure that the team is supported and that all of the gears are running well behind the scenes and making sure all the clients are supported and having everything that they need. So just kind of making sure that all of the pieces are working and working together well and moving the business forward.
Yay. And you were so fantastic at it. So that's what we're going to talk about today a little bit. I feel like we want to talk about maybe some of the less obvious things that we like think about from a systems lens or systematized and why those are so important. Because I feel like sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. Like I was just having this, it's so funny. I was having this conversation with one of my clients there. She's a longtime client. Like we have probably been working together for 4 years, like a long ass time, right? And she asked me some question that led to me being like, oh yeah, well, we just do this, this, and this. And she was like, wait, what? And I was like, yeah, just this, this, and this. What, like, why? What have you been doing? And she told me this whole thing that she's been doing. And I was like, oh God, no, no. Right. But it's like, and then once like we talked about it, she was like, how have I not thought about this differently? But it's like sometimes you just don't know what you don't know, or you don't think about it. If your brain isn't wired for like systems or structure, it can be really hard to even think about what you would systematize. So that's kind of the lens I wanted to talk about it through today, because the truth is, and I mean, I know it's like the less sexy version of scaling or whatever. The truth is like the way you're going to grow your business, if you have systems that let you grow your business, like it just doesn't really happen without it, or it happens and then you crash and burn because you don't have the structure set up for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's two things that happen if you don't have systems. Like, one, either you're just like in this constant hamster wheel of trying to, because you're like, oh, I have to over here make sure all of the things are running smoothly. And then, like, over here crashes. So then I have to go over here. And it's just this constant, like, chaotic feeling. And I think that systems help to kind of create a little bit more structure so that you might still be able to focus your energy in different areas at different times. But like, it's not like if you give one thing your focus, this other thing is crashing down and burning or, whatever. And so I think that that's something. And I also think that, like, you that's also what helps you take on more or like scale
Yeah.
more or start to like even just think of, like creating something else or anything like that is if you have everything kind of like systematized, because then your business can kind of support, like the foundation is there that then it can support growing on top of it. If you have a faulty foundation, you're going to have fault, like you're going to start wobbling the higher up you build essentially. And so I think that that's why we, really believe in a lot of like, even just like Lacey said, like the smaller systems are also just as important as some of like the bigger things that people talk about a lot more.
It's so funny. You just like totally triggered something for me where I'm like, we have to talk about this, but it's not appropriate at this moment. So I'm going to write it down, but I'm like,
Okay.
I have something for us there. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, okay. But yeah, I think, hi, Janet. Thank you for being here. And if you guys have questions about systems too, like, again, sometimes we don't even realize or know what we don't know. So if you're like, I'm thinking about this for next year, I have a question on this, just drop them below. Let us know how we can help. But, hey, Lucy. Okay. So okay, I want to talk about some of the smaller ones, but the first thing I want to talk about, because I was thinking about like, what would y'all have a curiosity around or what would be helpful to you? And one thing I've been talking about a lot recently is how much I've taken back in terms of content. Um, and I don't think I've said how that's changed on the back end. And so that might be helpful to talk about, because I think that sometimes we think that like when we take something back or when we own something, then like we don't need systems. And it's like totally the opposite. in how we do it. Oh, good. Shannon just said a social media system. I get so overwhelmed. Okay, cool. Then this might be like the perfect conversation. We still are incredibly systematized, even though I've taken back a lot of it, because the only way I can take back a lot of it is if we have like this whole system around it. Like when I actually wrote down the other day how much content I'm responsible for each week. And I was like, oh my God, that's a fucking lot. But the reason I can do that is because it's so specific and so systematized. And so I think it might be helpful to talk through what it looks like to kind of like own that in your business, but also have these like pieces working around it for you. I'll kind of pass the baton here, Megan, but I'll just say for me, I'm a generator in human design. I don't know if that's helpful to anyone, but like I definitely relate to the idea of when I have something I can respond to, things are very easy for me. So a lot of how we have our social media system or our content system set up is team delivers something to me or reminds me that something is due or something needs to be done, or it's very structured on my calendar. So I can be kind of responsive to that and get it done. Where if I just had to remember like, oh, I need to write a newsletter this week and I need to post a reel and I need to what, like, there is absolutely no chance in the fucking world that I'll get done ever. Megan's laughing because she's like,
I know.
yeah.
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 Well, and I think too, like one of the things, like one of the ways that we do that too is like in Lacey's calendar, we have time blocks for different things that she's like different things that she'll be creating and writing. And I think that that is really helpful too, because it, even if it doesn't happen on that day, like, okay, let's say you have a time block at like on a Monday and you have a doctor's appointment, then it still gets moved. So it's not like, oh, it just doesn't get done, or like team has no idea when that's going to get done or something like that. And so I think that just by having something as simple as like, okay, we have to-dos, we have things in the calendar, like Lacey's calendar, time blocked out. And then that way there's still some like
structure.
There's structure, but it's also a little bit open. Like it's not like totally open-ended, but it's also not super rigid, right? So I think that that is something to definitely think about, because I think everybody's a little bit like different on that scale of like how much rigidity versus like open-endedness that feels supportive there. But I think you do need some sort of like both, right? Because I think if it was something that was like a little bit too structured, then I think that that starts to kind of like put too much pressure, and like I think creativity like suffers in that space. But also if it's too open-ended, like then I mean you just don't have the structure to support it.
So like a really good example of this to get super specific of like structured and flexible is, so we have Megan made us like an Excel document. Yeah, it's an Excel doc. Yes. Okay. So it just took my brain a second. It's like a Google sheet, right? So like for like our Instagram posting, we do 2 reels a week and 2 posts a week. And then I have like a flex day if I want to do something else, right? So her and team will go and put in what posts they're going to select for those days. And then since I am the owner of the reels, meaning like I have to record them, but also the drafts live on my phone, I will then go in and put what like days I'm going to post those. And I can always change my mind that day. Like I can be like, oh, today I was going to post this one, but I'm feeling this one more. Fine. Who cares? Doesn't matter. But also it's really easy for me if I'm busy that day to just be like, oh yeah, I was going to post this one. Boom, it's posted and done. And so that's really nice. And then also I have a flex day where it's like, if I want to put out something extra this week, I can. If I don't want to, it doesn't matter. But I feel like quite a bit of like creative freedom in that. And so it's really helpful, like how that is structured in both like very systematized way, and also it's really easy to change. It's really easy to be flexible on. It's really easy to be like, I'm feeling this today instead of this. And so I think that helps me a lot because my days just vary sometimes too. Like, you know, sometimes I have a lot of client stuff on and sometimes I don't. And so on a day that's really busy, being able to not think about it and just go post really quickly means a lot to me. And on a day where I have more space, like this happened last week, on a day I had more space, I was like, I saw a reel that I liked on Instagram and I was like, fuck it, I'm going to make this one and film it today. So like, right. I wouldn't normally do that, but it just kind of gives you space either way. Anything about that, Megan, that feels relevant from the system side of like how you structured that?
I think that like I'm going to bring in like ManyChat a little bit here because I think that that's really relevant. Where like we are going to be starting to do some things with ManyChat. And I think that if
You're not using ManyChat, by the way, you should.
yes,
It's crazy not to be using this right now, but go on.
and I think that it's one of those things where like if we didn't have these other structures and this other like all of the other part of the system, adding in ManyChat would feel so chaotic and so hard to like keep track of and all of that. And I think that now that we have both kind of like the back end where we're planning things out and we know what to expect on like a week by week, day to day basis. And then we can also plan in ManyChat and make sure that, okay, on Friday, there's going to be a Black Friday post. And so we want to make sure that the ManyChat automation is set up for that. And so we can kind of like start to add in, that's an example of like adding on more because we already have the basic system in place. And so we're able to continue to expand on that and add in several like other layers that's going to augment the basic things like the, you know, not basic, but like the main core things that we're doing.
It's so true. Shannon said she loves that idea, Megan, because she's resisted systems because of how structured they can feel. But I know there's a way for it to feel fun and light too. Shannon, I know you're a mama too. So I'll just speak to that for me. But like, because shit is so structured in terms of like there's space in my calendar of when I'm going to like make my reels or write a newsletter or whatever, I feel so much freedom then when I'm with Bennett to like be and not be like, oh shit, I have to write a newsletter this week. Oh shit, I have to do it because I know it like lives somewhere. So I don't know if that feels helpful or not, but like what I try to think about is how like the systems give me a lot of freedom because then I'm not like having all these things running in the back of my head all the time. I just like know they have a place somewhere. And if they don't have a place, they like we have to restructure the business, not my life. Do you know what I mean? Right. So I think that's been like really useful too, especially again, as we've made a lot of changes this year to like how much I'm sort of like responsible for what I'm on for, like making sure that those have a system and a place has given me so much freedom. Like I think if I had taken all that back on this year without doing that, I would feel like a crazy, I mean, sometimes I still feel like a crazy person, but I would feel like more of a crazy person. So that's like super relevant to say. Yeah. Shannon said, yes, exactly. That's what happens in my brain all day with my kids. I just hired a VA after great launch and I need a system for her and me too. Such a good combo. Yes. So good. So yeah, even if you do something as simple as we were talking about with the spreadsheet, what gets posted on what day, you fill in your part, she fills in her part, we check posted when it gets posted. Like it's so basic. But it's so valuable in terms of just like, it's like mental load being lifted. And again, obviously when you're a mom, a mental load is super high. And so having ways to pull that off your plate is so valuable.
I think too, like, I don't know if this is valuable to anybody, but like, if you're like, okay, I want to create a spreadsheet with my team or something like that. I would say like for you and your team to think about like just what are the things that we need in a system? Like what do we need to know is essentially what I had asked myself, like in our, like what do we need out of this? And I think that that's a really good question to ask yourself at the beginning because you can build a system that supports what you're needing and what you and your team are needing versus feeling like, oh, there's a system I have to fit into this. It's like we think of it backwards, right? Where it's like, I think that listen, like there are great like systems that like you can just like, I mean, I tell them like I have templates that you can just like follow my systems, but the whole point is to customize it to make it work for you and your business. And so I think that that's always the thing to think about whenever you're creating any type of system to follow in your business is just like what do I need it to do for me, like what do I need to know, does my team need to know. So for us it was like we needed to know when are different posts going out, who's posting it, did it get posted or not? Is it planned or not? Like those are the simple questions that we were asking. And so that's what our spreadsheet gives us. And so it was just a very simple way to just kind of share all of that information.
It's so interesting too, because there was like this short interim period where like what we were doing, we were no longer doing anymore, but we hadn't yet built the system. And so Megan and I were just asking each other all these dumbass questions all the time of like, when was that supposed to go out? And is that post ready? And like, what was going out today again? Like, right. And then Megan was just like, we don't need to ask each other these questions. Like, we could just
Be right back.
Oh yeah, Megan's getting wine delivery. So we're pausing for Megan's wine delivery. But yeah, we were asking each other like all these questions, which I feel like sometimes you don't realize how much of your day and time that can take up, where it's like, okay, we interfaced today 3 different times on like what was getting posted this week. How much of my time did that waste? How much of Megan's time did that waste versus like one sheet or system where we can go look at and I just like know the answer to all of it. But I think we can normalize that sometimes too, if we've been doing that for a long time. Like it's normal to just like go back and forth with my VA all day, or like, oh, it's normal to, have to check this one thing 13 times. And so sometimes we just have to like stop and pay attention to like, could we be doing this more efficiently? Do we actually need to be checking in this much? If Megan and I are checking in about something a lot, it's almost always a red flag. Yeah. Right.
Especially if it's the same thing, like the same question
Totally.
over and over. And that's a good like, thing for team too, right? Like if you notice like your team, whether it's like asking the same questions or making the same mistake or just like certain things getting dropped, any of those things, in my opinion, are just like flags that there needs to be something tweaked in the system.
Yeah. Yeah. Sarah said, and the only way a system is actually going to work and be used is if it's set up according to the team needs and how they operate. Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's another red flag. Like if your team is constantly resisting using a system, or if you're constantly resisting using it, there's something not right. Like it's not giving you what you need. Like I use that fucking spreadsheet all the time because it gives me what I need.
Exactly. Right? Not because it's a spreadsheet, like, because you know what I mean? Like, it's like, it's not about the thing. It's about like, what is it giving you and how is it supporting you?
Exactly. I think other things that we do systems for that feels important to say, I think we're so quick to always talk about the marketing ones because they are really heavy and cumbersome in some ways. So I totally get that. But we have so many systems around like client support and client service too. And I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs put that last or forget that or like don't systematize that because they're so busy thinking about like what's the marketing system, what's the sales system, which again, those are like really important things. I'm not making light of that. But the most important thing in your business is how well you serve the clients you have. And so that's something I would love for us to share about a little bit too, is like, oh wait, there's one more thing I want to say before we do that. But anyway, we're going to start about that. But one other like small example of a marketing system that I wanted to mention, because again, we like talking about like kind of the smaller specifics, is like, excuse me, we have like a Black Friday system, meaning like we have a similar post that we share every year. And Megan has a trigger for when to pull that up. I have a trigger for when I need to edit it by. Like little things like that versus every year having to be like, oh shit, wait, isn't Black Friday really soon? Do we have a thing? What are we going to say? What do we always say about that? Like you would be so shocked how much time that wastes. So I think that's really something to think about too, is like it can be these very small things of like, what I'm just making this up. I don't even remember what the date was, but like every October 15th, we're notified to go look at these 3 things and then we can make adjustments as needed. But like even stuff like that is really important. Or like I have a client who always does like a birthday sale, like cool, that needs to be systematized. So every year it's easy instead of every year being like, what do we do for the birthday sale again? Like it's just crazy making. And so I just wanted to mention that one. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Megan, but I don't think we think about those little things and how much time they take from us.
I mean, I think for us specifically, like a good example too is just like with the podcast and with literally seasons, where like we're not reinventing the wheel either. Like we have like a launch process for like the process for a new season coming out, the process for wrapping up an existing season. What do we do in between seasons? So it's like something too where we're not necessarily like we have those triggers, like Lacey said, at different points that are relevant to our business. And so like I think everyone can do Black Friday, holiday stuff, whatever. But then also think about the things that are relevant to your business and like, what do I need to be notified or what does team need to prompt me on, 1 month, 2 months in advance or something like that. So that it's not like November 20th and you're like, oh shit, Black Friday, like, what should we do for this kind of thing? And so I think again, like, it's not even always necessarily that you have to like do the whole thing like a month or 2 months in advance. But I think a lot of it too is just like I use a lot of the reminders just as like Lacey said to trigger the conversation,
Yeah.
just to kind of see like, okay, what if it is something that's slightly different every time? Like what does so for example, this is more like back end stuff, but like I always have a trigger that like prompts me like what are to talk to team about holiday hours and stuff. When are you taking off? What is your availability
Yeah.
going to be like? And same thing then having conversations with Lacey about like what needs to change over the holidays. And we start having those conversations like end of October, early November. We're not doing anything necessarily for it, but we at least have some of those decisions. We have the space to make those decisions and things like that. And so I think those are the types of things to think about too in marketing and also on the back end.
I think that it's those things that like I'm being so dramatic here, but like crush your away from the business time if you don't get them. Like I was out to dinner with Penny on Saturday night and I was thinking about how present I felt and how much I got to just like be there. Where I feel like if I didn't have some of this stuff, I would have been like at dinner and gotten like a moment of like downtime, from like momming and lifing and all the things. And I would have been like, oh my God, do we have a Black Friday post? What are we doing for that? Did we do it? Oh, this client, did she ask for this? And what are we doing for that? And did we move her session into like, it would have just been like, oh my God. And so that is the value of systems. And that is why it creates freedom, because then when you're doing the other life things, you're not like having these constant triggers. And if you are, those are the things to start thinking about systematizing. So that's a good thought too. Like if you're like, oh yeah, I was out to dinner with my partner the other day and these 5 things came up. Amazing. Like what systems could you put in place for those 5 things so that doesn't happen is like a good place to start. Okay, we have some good questions. Shannon said, how did you figure out what was a priority to systematize? She said you might have just answered that, but I think like, obviously, Megan and I always say this, but I always do think content is the first thing because it is the core of your business, right? And so at the beginning, when you don't quite have a ton of clients yet or whatever, like definitely systematize content, make your marketing a bit of a system, but then past that, like, yeah, client delivery, client service for sure. And then I think get micro from there. Do you agree with that, Megan?
Yeah, and I think too, like one of the things that, especially at the beginning, like if you're first starting, whether this is like starting your business or starting something new, like it's just the first time you've done something, you might not have like a super streamlined system for it yet. But as you're starting to go through things and figure things out, just start writing them down because that's going to be kind of like your outline to create a system for the future. So, like, for example, if you're onboarding your first client, you're not necessarily going to have like a streamlined system if you've never onboarded a client before. But like start writing down, okay, cool, this is what I did, this is the email I sent, whatever. And then the second client, you basically start to go through the same thing and refine it. And that starts to make it easier and easier to pass off to your team when you're ready for that too.
So good. Hey, Brittany. Okay, so Emma has a really good question too. She said, I'd love to hear how long into running your business you think it's time to start thinking about building out systems, and when is it too early or just not worth your time? I mean, never is too early, in my opinion. Emma, you probably identify with this around data, but like for both data and systems, I'm like, it's literally never too early because you're building for the business that you want in so many ways, right? I don't think you need to make it extra complicated. I think a lot of people at the beginning of their business, what I see them do is like get super what's the word? Like they try to be fancy with it almost. They're like, well, I built out all these Asana boards and blah, blah, Megan and I hate Asana. So I'm just being a brat, but it's like, I built out all of these Asana boards and da, 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 da. Like I'm with Megan, like maybe you have a Google Doc with 3 steps on it and like a very simple Excel spreadsheet or something like that. But at the beginning of your business, doing that is really helpful because like what happened to me in my business is I like had no clients and then all of a sudden I had a bunch of clients. And so like it happened quickly, which is obviously a good thing and what a lot of us want. But if you don't have systems that you kind of already started on, then when you really need them and when you're quite busy, it's so much harder to get any of that going. And so, yeah, like I never think it's too early, but I do think sometimes it's too early to like really buy into all the complication that's out there.
100%. I think like for the most part, start the day you start your business, basically, but start with something very simple. Like think of it as like, okay, I'm just writing it down in Google Docs or just creating like simple spreadsheets or like I'm just creating a checklist or something like that. Because I think that that's just like a very, very simple system. But I think that you can kind of expand on that over time as the business needs you to. But I think that if you like started and you're like, I'm gonna buy like the fancy software and spend all this time and money in like investing into learning the software, setting it up, like all of that, and then like I just find that to be not the most valuable use of your time, especially at the beginning of your business. So like keeping things simple and expanding into a like more robust system as you need it. But most people at the beginning, I don't think do.
If this is helpful for anybody, this was my client onboarding system at the beginning of my business. I had a notes thing on my MacBook and it just literally said the steps to do, like send link, update calendar, like, add to Basecamp. Like it literally was just a note and it had like 7 things on it or whatever it was. I don't even remember. I still have it. I screenshotted it not that long ago. Right. And that was it. And so every time I had to do a new client, I would just go look at that and be like, yeah, 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 yeah. Like that simple. But then when Megan started working for me, then I could be like, cool, here's what I do for client onboarding. And so just made both of our lives a lot easier, but it was literally just a note in my notes app.
Totally. And I think that that's like the best way to start anything. And that's what I'm saying too. Like anytime you start something new, you don't have to necessarily build out the system. Like just start making notes to yourself of like what you did. If you launched a program, start making notes on like, okay, cool. These are the steps that I took, or these are the whatever. Like, I think that sometimes just even documenting what we did can feel so supportive, because then the next time you go do that thing, you're not trying to remember, okay, what did I do? And like, did this come first or that or anything like that?
Or do
And I
it
think,
totally differently.
yeah, exactly.
I think that that's it too. Like I would have ended up doing that client onboarding thing totally differently every single time if I didn't have it written down, like I would have like made the wrong kind of link, or I would have had people on all these different packages because I couldn't fucking remember what I did. Like I know myself and how my brain works. So that's exactly what would have happened. Brittany said, what's an example of like I think she said systematizing your content process, but I think when she asked that, we were just talking about like all the like simple ways to do it. So honestly, literally exactly the same. Like have a Google Doc and just write what you do as a starting point. Like I write my content on Mondays. I post it at this time, or I pull it from here, or I store it here, or I like, grab my images here. Like just start writing down what you do for it. One, obviously that's helpful because then if you go to pass it on, it will be useful, but 2, it's going to help you spot what's not simple. Like whenever you write something down like that, it's so easy to be like, wait, why am I storing it here and then doing this and grabbing it here? So like, that's a really helpful way if you want to make it like very simple, very useful too, is to just like see where your gaps are when you write it. I must say thank you for that perspective. I know it's a balance of it's not too early, and my perfectionist tendencies to make it perfect before I begin. Totally, always. Shannon said, thank you for sharing that. I'm thinking you have a whole Asana board with every task written down perfectly. Fuck no. Again, Megan and I do not use Asana. But no, I mean, most of it is not that at all. It's like a Google Doc or something. A lot of what we do too is like calendar stuff and triggers. Like Megan said, she has like a calendar reminder or trigger for like asking team about holidays, Black Friday stuff. I have it for like the tasks I have done. So it's not always these like, I think we've talked about this. I'm not even in our project management system. Like that's not where I'm getting to-dos or reminders. It's like on my calendar. Because that's how it's going to get done. Like anytime I've like gone into a project management system or whatever, I'm like, oh, I don't have time for all this. I don't know about that. Right. And so that's not for me personally, an actual helpful way to have a fully built out system and get it done. So Shannon said it's not even in the project management system. That sounds so luxurious. Yeah. Well, obviously Megan has some stuff in there, right? But it's like, I don't have to go in there because we have it structured in a way that doesn't need that. And so that's another value of having the system. If part of the system is that Megan tells me what to do, so I don't have to look in the system or in the, yeah.
I literally have tasks for myself that will say prompt Lacey to do this thing or like send Lacey to do, because like, again, like it's just, our process is much more like Lacey has certain things that she does get to do's. It's not like she has nothing. Like, but I think that you just need to also find what works for you. And if like you're feeling stressed, like I don't get super stressed going into our project management system, but like my brain works very differently. And my job is very different than Lacey's. And so like if you're going into your project management system and you're like, fuck, like then I think that listen to that. Like don't force yourself to go into the system, right? Like make the system work for you, or make the, if you don't like your to-dos in a sauna or something, try putting them into your calendar. If you don't like them there, you know what I mean? Like just play with different things and start to learn about like your own behavior and like what feels more supportive to actually make to actually get stuff done versus trying to force yourself. Well, everybody uses this, and so it must be the magical solution to get me to do the things. Like that doesn't exist. Everybody has different ways of like organizing things.
Okay, Megan, I don't know if this is you're gonna be totally expecting of this, or you're gonna be like, no, God, no. But I'll show you what I do. I've been doing this thing lately and it's so silly, but it helps me so much. I can't show you the whole thing because I have a client name on it. So whatever, I'm just gonna like show it really quickly, but like, cool. That is just my list for today. And every night I just like print it out. Like I just work off that.
I love
Megan's
that so much.
And a lot of these things are on my calendar. It just makes me feel good to check it off. But it's also personal shits on here, like things that are on here. Like what I had a flight booked and they changed the flight time. Fuck you. But I have to like go look at that and be like, does this new time work or not? Or like I have a return I need to do. And then the rest are like, had to post my reel today. I had to finish my content. And so I just like cross it off. And it's like, this is my system basically alongside my calendar and whatever. And I'm not saying that this is right for everyone, but I just think it's like simple as the vibe.
I think too, it's one of those things where like, I think that's a really good point of you can also allow different things to work together, right? Like you have the calendar, but you also have a checklist so that it's kind of like the calendar maybe is like more of the time blocks and things like that. But then the checklist can get a little bit more granular into the specific to-dos or something like that, right? So I think it's like, think about like using things in conjunction with each other and figuring that out. So
it just makes me feel very, what's the word? I know this sounds weird to say, but I will say easeful. because it's just like I can just see it at any given time, and it's just like right, and then it makes me not feel overwhelmed. Like the reason I don't go into our project management system is because I find it very overwhelming, and so I love that I only have to look at my shit for today, and I just get to like be in today and know that the other shit has a spot on my calendar, and I don't have to worry about it. Like I will not put anything on this list that I am not reasonably certain I will get done today.
I was just going to say, I think it's also like a good self check point kind of thing of like,
Yes.
I'm not going to put 20 things on my to-do list because like that's not going to happen. That's not reasonable. And so I think it almost like forces you to like really pay attention to what am I like, what can I reasonably get done today?
Yes, exactly. It really feels very, very good. Lucy said, I'm excited to go back and watch the replay. I had to jumping back in with the to-do list. And I recently have noticed that I need to get more organized with my daily tasks. It's hard switching between zooming out at big picture and zooming back in 100%. I even group my thing on my list. Sometimes so like that my top group is like easy shit I can check off. And my bottom group is like stuff that probably needs like a little more attention. And so even that helps. Emma says this is so stupid, but I get so stuck with like even the best way to get that system set up. Like, okay, I need to schedule when each night I'm going to write out my to-do list. It's how I wrap my day. I don't know if that's helpful, but it's like always the last thing I'll do in my day is do my thing for tomorrow. Like if I have printed my to-do list for the next day, I'm done. Like I will not do fucking anything else. So I don't know. It feels like brushing my teeth. Like I'm not going to eat anything else. I'm like brushing my teeth before bed and that's it.
I use a lot of reminders. So I use reminders on my phone. I use emails sometimes to like prompt me. I actually also not for to-dos, but like as a little bit of like ending my workday, this is just me. I'm not actually thinking anybody's going to do this, but like I set up an automation so that there's a Zap that sends me an email at the end of every day with a Google form that I fill out for myself. And like that's kind of one, a little bit of like my trigger to know that it's like, okay, it's the end of the day. So I'm not just like, because like I can easily get caught into something, but like that's my trigger of like, okay, time to wrap up. And then that's my like last thing that I do at the end of the day. And it's a little bit more of like a review type of thing, but like that's the last thing that I'm doing. And then that kind of like, so you could do something like that where you get like an email or a notification on your phone or something like that. I also have like music just like start to come on at a certain time. So like you can use different things, like different like notifications
Triggers.
or like other triggers. It doesn't have to be like in your task management system or something like that. Like just thinking about like what would potentially be, what can I connect it to kind of like, you know, start to have that as a reminder that isn't just like a to-do thing.
I love that. Yeah, Emma loves that. She needs that, she said. But yeah, I think like that's a good way to think about systems too, is like it's a broad thing. It's like I think everyone like we're talking about here thinks it's like shit in a project management system. It might be like music that starts in your house at a certain time.
Yeah.
Like your to-do list gets printed and then you're done for the day. Whatever, like some of that is systematizing too. And I think that can make a really big difference. And there's not like right? Like I could have Megan set up an automation for me, but like I probably don't need that. I need the print the list for Megan. Like, you know, neither is right or wrong. It's just like, do you have these things that like create triggers for you, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we could do like a whole separate one on some of our client systems and stuff, because I think that could be really relevant too. Let me write that too. I already have another idea, but I think we probably wouldn't do it justice if we got into it too much today, but I think that the way you're going to have a great business is you're going to have happy clients. The way you're going to have happy clients is to actually like systematize their experience too. Whether that's like your onboarding, your client service, your delivery, all of those things. So we can talk about that a little bit more, but I think that that's what I don't hear getting talked about a lot in our space. It's like everything is about like the marketing of it. And again, that matters, but I think the client piece does too. Okay. Good to see you, Emma. Thank you. But yeah, I feel like the takeaway from today can just be a lot more like create the systems that work for you and fit you, but don't don't think they have to be so specific that you don't want to have them. Like, yeah, trust me, no matter how your brain works, I have clients that are every human design, every astrological sign, what the fuck ever, right? And all of them are supported when they find a way to systematize that fits them. Whether it's like I literally have one client, I shit you not, who still keeps an entire paper calendar. The idea of that stresses me to the max. I cannot imagine writing something in pen on a paper calendar and having to contend with that, but she loves it. And it's just like a system that works for her and supports her. So I feel like if you are winging it in your business right now, you have no idea how much time, energy, and effort you're wasting. Like, I know that can feel like freedom, but the amount of decision fatigue you are probably in if you are just figuring it out every day, or if you're just like guessing at what you should be getting done, is so extreme. You probably don't even realize it. It's like one of those things where you don't realize how much it sucks until you're out of it. Lucy said, do we have a specific system for content? Jumping in late. So maybe that was covered content calendar. Yeah, we did actually talk about that, Lucy. We talked about like an Excel or a Google sheet we have. So definitely go back and watch that part. But we have like a very simple Google sheet we use. And then obviously we have, I don't think we talked about this, but we have like a content bank and storage, which is really important too. So we have access to all old content. I still think that that's really valuable. Megan has like a system template on that too. So if you want that, Megan has on her website, whitespace.team has like a whole thing on that. But the main point was just like, keep it simple. I think people would be surprised how simple our content system and spreadsheet really is. But most of our system is built on triggers. A trigger for me to write the newsletter, a trigger to post something, a trigger to like complete the content for that week or whatever. And I think that's the part that I feel like we miss so much. Like, it's like you could go build out a whole Asana board or whatever, but unless that's triggering you with reminders, how are you just remembering to go in Asana every day? And then are you remembering to check in all the right places? Like, to me, that's the part that most systems miss.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too, like, it does change over time. Like we were talking about before with the content, like we had a system that for what we were doing at that point worked really well, but then we changed what we were doing. And so we needed to change the system to support that. And so I think like, I think a lot of people start to feel stuck in their system of like, oh, this is how we do it. And this is what we do. And so it's almost like, even if things change, you feel like you're just stuck in that same system. And I think that it's one of those things where, permission to set up a system that supports you, but also permission to change that system as you need to, because things will change in your business.
That is so spot on. I actually was talking to one of my clients the other day who has also changed her content plan quite a bit. But what she was trying to do was still use the old system she had set up, but find a way to like infuse all of the new stuff into it. And she was getting like absolutely bogged down in this and just drowning in it. And she was like, yeah, but if I do this, then this, and if I do this, then this. And we're like, well, why don't you just change it? And she's like, well, that's how my team does it. I'm like, your team doesn't do it that way because they have to. They do it that way because you told them to, probably, or because it worked at the time. Like, they would be happy to change it. And she's like, oh my God, yeah, they would be fucking happy to change it. Like, why are we all living in this system that doesn't work for us anymore? So I think you're so spot on. Is like, sometimes it's really hard to build it, but then sometimes when you build it, you don't want to change it. And like, both are really important. Mm-hmm. So good. Okay. So remember, if you showed up today, you are entered to, entered to win like anything from Megan or I in terms of products. You can go on Megan's website, whitespace.team, or mine, aletuplife.com, look at our products, pick anything you want. We do not have any Black Friday stuff coming out of Lit Up Life for obvious reasons because we don't have spots. But we are doing a big Black Friday sale for Measure and Maximize at Dateable. So keep your eyes open for that. If you've been thinking about getting into data with us and joining us over there, we are doing a big discount and some awesome bonuses. So I can't tell you what they are yet, but they're great. You can find out. We'll email out on Black Friday, or you can just send me a DM on Instagram or whatever, and I can get you that. But be on the lookout. But we'll also post like a thread in here so you guys can share all your Black Friday offers too. So if you want to come back and share, we have that as well. And otherwise, I hope that you guys have a happy Thanksgiving if you celebrate, a successful Black Friday. And I think I will be back on Monday to talk about like basically how to end the year strong, but also like how to think about your Black Friday, what happened, what to process from it, all those kind of things. So that is that. Megan, are you doing anything for Black Friday? Can they get your templates or anything?
You know, I actually thought about this the other day. I was like, oh, I should probably do a Black Friday. I'm not, no. But I might, I
They're
don't know.
also very
I,
reasonably priced
yeah,
anyway, so it kind of doesn't
yeah,
matter. But yeah.
yeah. I feel like at this point, I'm a little late to the game. I don't have my own, see, this is my problem. I don't have my own triggers to like remind myself of these things. I just do it for clients, but
That's always how it is, right?
yeah,
Like the
yeah,
social media managers that don't do their own social very much.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Well, Megan, so grateful to you as always for being here. I have so many ideas for our next chat. I thank you guys
Yeah.
so much for being here, and I will see y'all next week. Bye, guys.